I'm going to show you how to make these reversible cloth jar covers. I've made mine out of cotton gauze and linen, and I've sized these to fit both wide mouth jars and standard opening jars, but they'll fit up to a 10-inch diameter jar. In addition to this instructional video, I've also included a PDF download with the pattern and instructions. To make one of these jar covers, you will need fabric, at least two 8 by 8 inch pieces. You'll need 1/4 inch elastic in an 8-inch piece. You'll need thread that matches or contrasts your fabric. You'll need a safety pin. Now the first thing you'll want to do is cut out your pattern piece. I like to use cardstock, so you can print it on cardstock. That makes it pretty easy to use over and over. And then I like to use a felt tip pen to mark my fabric. And I use a pretty light hand here so that the fabric doesn't shift underneath the pattern piece. And I just go around with my pen until I've marked the entire diameter of the circle. And then I repeat that process for the second circle. And then the next step is to cut out the circles. And after I cut out my pieces, I take both of those right sides together over to my sewing machine and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the circle except for 1 inch to leave as an opening to turn it right side out. And now I'm trimming the seam allowance to roughly 1/4 of an inch. You can make it a little bit smaller, but try not to leave any more. So now it's time to turn it right side out. I like to do this by using my pointer finger and thumb, getting all the way to the other side, and then just kind of shimmying the whole thing right side out. Now I use my finger to go around the entire inside edge to make sure that the seam is all the way up against the side. Now I get those little unsewn pieces of seam allowance into their place, then I take it over to my iron and press the whole thing flat. And then next I took it back to my sewing machine and sewed around the entire diameter about 1/3 of an inch in, or 1 centimeter. And now I attach the safety pin to the elastic piece and use that to go through the channel. Once I get to a place where the elastic might go through farther than I want it to, I use a clip to hold it in place. You can also use another safety pin to hold it in place until you get to the other side. Next, I overlap the two elastic ends about 1/2 inch and take it over to the sewing machine and sew those together. This part's a little bit fiddly, but just sew it as best you can and go slowly. Now the last step is to sew together these two little pieces here. You can do that by hand or use your sewing machine and do an edge stitch. And that's it. This reversible jar cover is finished and ready to cover a jar. And there are lots of different options for fabrics to use. I would definitely stick to natural fibers. But you can see for that one, I used a solid cotton gauze and then a printed gauze. And then for these two, they're both linen. Like I said at the beginning, they work great on wide mouth jars and then the smaller openings as well. Also, this pattern is really easy to modify. You can make a circle that's bigger or larger and then lengthen or shorten your elastic so that you can make a bowl cover or even a cover that would be good for a tiny container. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this video was helpful and that you're able to make your own jar covers like this. Please do tag me on Instagram if you make them yourself. I'd love to see.